Like, what do you make of Hunter Biden doing Andrew Callaghan's show? Like, it just seems so out of absolutely nowhere.
I mean, I did watch the whole interview. I'm still processing because there were moments of joy, there were moments of frustration, anger, pain, remorse. Like there was a whole arc of emotions that I experienced while watching it personally, but it seemed clear to me that Hunter is a fan of Andrew Callaghan. Like
Hmm.
he clearly had watched his work and thought that he would be at least, if not openly sympathetic, at least like would hear him out on he wanted to talk about his recovery and sort of just be a human being, I think, as well, and not just, a person that we hear about through the tabloids or through his photos that are released from the tabloids or whatever. So it seemed to me like, in a sense, he was approaching Andrew Callaghan in the same way that Trump approached, a bunch of the podcast bros going into the election of like, let me use this as a long form platform where I can sort of be humanized and not just be fed through, whatever mostly right wing news outlet Prism my story is typically fed through. So that's what I got out of the choice. Is just like he liked this guy and he thought he would get at least somewhat of a fair hearing and have the ability to, express himself in a variety of ways, which he certainly did.
Yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
we all were had the same reaction when this interview dropped. Like my afternoon just got booked. I know we all watched the whole thing, and so Saagar, on that note, I just want to ask how you think it went for Hunter Biden.
Well, I mean, I don't think this is the kind of the thing is I don't know, Crystal. I wonder what you think. I think it's kind of connected to people going on places where they don't feel like they're going to be as challenged. Because I mean, I don't know how in the news Andrew is, but there's a lot of times where Andrew could have been like, "Well, man, that's not really what happened," or it's like, "Well, actually, in terms there was a variety of different ways that Hunter was trying to spin things, like the actual like news and TikTok of things that happened, or asking a follow-up question, let's say, on the claim that actually it's Ambien's fault for why the president was addled during his debate with Donald Trump. I mean, I could think of a million different other times, but I mean, there's a couple of different ways to read it. Like it's Hunter Unleashed. It's part of like the bitterness tour, and I think it's pretty clear. If there's all these books coming out 2024 with Josh Dawsey and others, I think from the Wall Street Journal team, kind of inside the denial of the Biden White House, the Jake Tapper book, obviously. But I mean, the enduring theme from Biden and the Biden family seems to be that they think that, it's everybody else's fault for pushing them out. And I don't think they've been all that quiet about it. So for Hunter, I mean, it's more about like, was he successful in conveying his bitterness? Like, yeah, I think so. I mean, that's really that the whole thing just seemed like a therapy session, really, for Hunter to be able to just vent his grievances
Hmm.
against all of these people. But I mean, it's just somewhat ironic, no? Like he's calling out like the Pod Save America guys. And listen, I have my criticism, and he's like, these guys here grifting off Obama. I'm like, bro, like, what? Like, you're the president's son. Like, nobody would even
Right.
care. You wouldn't even be rich if you weren't the president's son. Like, shut
That
up.
was
You know?
one of the things I did enjoy
Yeah.
most about it was like he has such unchecked visceral hatred for everyone who's ever been connected with
I
Obama.
actually have a clip
Yes.
of this.
Yeah.
Let's watch this, because that was one of the things that stood out to me, is how and this is, I think, actually a pretty important part of doing the podcast circuit, is that Dems look around and wonder, hey, what happened to Joe Rogan supporting like some people on the left? It's like, well, you guys demand fealty to your establishment in a way that Trump completely like he destroyed that on the right. He made it okay to be mad at Republican elites and be sort of a mainstream Republican. And here Hunter Biden is interestingly like casting himself and his father as the victims in this elite plot by Jake Tapper and Tommy Vietor to take down the Biden family name. Like, let's go ahead here and roll S4 first.
Opinions, but fuck him, fuck him, fuck him, and everybody around him.
I don't have to be fucking nice. Number one, I agree with Quentin Tarantino. Fucking George Clooney is not a fucking actor. He is a fucking, I don't know what he is. He's a brand. And James Carville, who hasn't run a race in 40 fucking years. And David Axelrod, who had one success in his political life, and that was Barack Obama. And that was because of Barack Obama, not because of fucking David Axelrod. And David Plouffe, and all of these guys, and the Pod Save America guys, who were junior fucking speechwriters in, on Barack Obama's Senate staff, who've been dining out on the relationship with him for years, making millions of dollars.
It is sort of delicious, Krystal.
Well, and it's very Trumpian. I picked up on the same thing.
Yeah.
Is like, here you have what is seemingly a preposterous situation. The son of the former president, who, you know, is also the former vice president, who is also a senator for 40 frickin' years, right? You do not get a more Washington elite creature than this person, right? And trying to position himself as somehow against the elites, and all of the Democratic elites are lined up against him. And so, you know, parts of the things that he's saying when he's like, fuck Rahm Emanuel and these people and Anita Dunn and Chief Mayor, you're like, yes, absolutely. Right. But then it's like world upside down, because then those people are in a cabal against Joe Biden, who actually those people propped up. I mean, they are, that very same cabal is the entire reason why he ends up being the 2020 nominee, why everyone closes ranks and there is no actual Democratic primary. So in some ways the words land. And then when you think about the broader context, you're like, this is insane. And that's what I mean when I say it's Trumpian, because same thing, like, you're a billionaire. You are the former president of the United States. You have now in your cabinet, like, what, a dozen different billionaires, et cetera. Like, you are the deep state, you are the establishment. And yet he still wants to paint himself as being this outsider who has this cabal of elite insiders who are against him. So, you know, it's funny because, to be honest with you, Hunter's a very compelling figure in this podcast. You know, so many Democrats suffer from they're measuring every word, and let me not say this, and let me be careful about this person's feelings, and let me not get out over my skis on immigration or whatever hot top button issue. He said whatever the hell he wanted to say. There was no censoring there. I mean, he actually was a very interesting and compelling podcast guest.
Mm-hmm.
Saagar, what do you think?
I totally agree. Personally, my favorite is whenever he was reminiscing about the joys of crack cocaine and almost
he
started.
Didn't want to.
But you could see the joy on his face. A man can only talk about that with something that he's ever truly loved. And
well, he also made crack sound maha, right? He was like,
it's healthier than alcohol. He's
crack
like, you're burning off all of the impurities. Yeah, it's true. Every crackhead I've ever seen is obviously the most pure individual. You know, that's what the crackheads are notorious for.
I could genuinely hear RFK making like a similar point, though, because didn't he talk one time about how like once he started doing heroin, that's when like his grades got really good?
That's
or
true.
something?
Yeah, he did say that. Yeah, he was like,
it
gives you this is actually very common from drug addicts. They're like, I finally felt like my true self. But yeah, I mean, with Hunter, the one clip where I was like, man, if he didn't have the baggage, there's something there, was actually him being like, I'm going to invade El Salvador to get back. No, I'm serious. And listen, I mean, look, you know, obviously my political disagreement, view of immigration, all that stuff aside, it was compelling. Like, I
thought Krystal was going to do that a couple months ago.
Yeah, but it was compelling.
I was ready to.
It was compelling to me in the sense of, you know, like Krystal's saying about Trump and just like no regard for, you know, like trying to be bounded by traditional conversation and all of that. I mean, I think everybody can look at him as like the pathetic Nepo son, you know, that he is, who obviously had his own like many myriad problems on top of creating them for the White House, etc. And not also say like, oh, you know, I could see why he's had like a charisma kind of around him for quite a long time.
Yeah, so this is S5. This is one of the moments. I actually don't blame Andrew for not going full like Mike Wallace on Hunter Biden, because he was there to have a 3-hour long conversation and get him to open up and all of that. But this was a moment. This one was a little frustrating. This is S5. It's not that Callaghan should have necessarily pushed him further. It's more just that like there's some pretty obvious, even easy questions personally that Hunter Biden could respond to when he talks about how he actually really didn't do anything wrong except for the drugs and the women. So this is S5.
I've been investigated by the House Oversight Committee, the House Ways and Means Committee, the House Judiciary Committee, the Senate Judiciary Committee, the Senate Oversight Committee, and I have been investigated by Maine Justice, the U.S. Attorney in Pittsburgh, the U.S. Attorney in Philadelphia, the U.S. Attorney in District of Columbia, the U.S. Attorney in Los Angeles, the U.S. Attorney of Delaware, the Special Counsel's Office. Not one single person has ever accused me of a crime based upon anything that was in or discovered as it relates to my laptop. Not one. Not a single thing about my laptop. So this whole idea that there was some conspiracy to cover up the laptop, they uncovered 20 years unvarnished of every single communication that I've ever had over a phone or by text or over email or computer in any digital way. There's not one communication that you can even remotely say is evidence of a crime. Not one. Not one time. Not one communication. I would challenge anybody to show one instance other than me seeking drugs for myself, for my own personal use, okay? Or women as it relates to, people that were in the drug trade that I would seek for the purchase of drugs.
Oh, yeah, just the drugs and the women aside. But Callaghan doesn't need to do the whole, like, but actually the Foreign Agent Registration Act. But, like, I don't expect him to do that. But it takes about 10 seconds to Google that. From those laptop emails, there were myriad evidence. There was myriad evidence of a FARA violation. And so Saagar, he was an unregistered foreign lobbyist, basically, which is a felony.
Look, it seems quaint at this point to redo all of the Hunter stuff. It's
you're right.
We've moved on. But my point is just, I think the point, what I would have followed up is like, Hunter, bro, you literally were pleading guilty. So you can't be sitting here talking about how nobody's ever accused me of a crime, let alone what happened with the tax evasion, with the, obviously trading around on his daddy's name for years as an unregistered foreign lobbyist. What is it? The gun charge. That's the one that they had him dead to rights on, right? In terms of filing all of that. Again, I don't think this is the quote biggest issue, but that kind of gets where, to Krystal's point of Hunter and his narcissism. He's like, I did nothing wrong. I did absolutely nothing wrong. It's like, dude, come on. You've been trading off your dad's name as an unregistered, basically, lobbyist. You were on the Amtrak board. There's all those emails that came out. Look, put all the tawdry stuff and the drug stuff aside. It was literally, trading off your father's name to meet with the Chilean or the Argentinians. It's just cut and dry stuff. But I don't know. For me, I wouldn't have even cared for Andrew pushing back there per se. For me, it was really about the Democratic primary stuff where he was painting this false narrative that again, it's the classic Biden points where he would be look at him. He gave a master class in NATO, during his 2-hour press conference. I was like, that's not what I remember, but okay.
He was virile.
Yeah, he was he was so strong.
Is that the one where he introduced Zelensky as
Yes,
Putin?
That's what I'm saying.
Putin. Yeah.
And that's also,
masterclass.
Why?
Right.
Yeah, that was the masterclass on NATO. And then he has this bitterness to Nancy Pelosi. And that's just where I would have been okay, yes. Well, hold on. And they'd be yeah, he's old. He got fucking old. Okay. But 81 years old, 81 million votes. I was well, okay, but there's some parsing in here for stuff to be done. So that would be more my, journalistic critique, I guess, if you will, is that he really let him get away with a lot of alternative history, not even enough it's on himself, which to me is the least relevant part, but about Biden himself. Because clearly what comes through is this is what Biden and the Biden family, this is what they believe. This clearly is their narrative for 2024. And I think that's really damaging considering the Dem autopsy. We're going to talk about this tomorrow on Breaking Points, but they're literally ignoring Joe Biden's age in the Democratic autopsy. I that's insane to me. That's literally insane.
And I think that's a good point from Saagar because look, Hunter, in fairness, he's not running for office. He's not seeking a position of power. So it does create a different, I don't feel like you have the same responsibility when at this point he's a, but the questions about, okay, well, what happened under your father's administration when this is still a very much active question of who was involved of an age-related cover-up and what was the reality of his functioning, that there's a little bit more of a pressing public interest in trying to seek answers from someone who was very clearly in a position to know. And so basically, his line was that he knows exactly why his dad had such a poor debate. It's because he'd flown around the world and he's,
here, let's, Krystal, I have the clip.
I'll just roll that? Okay.
Yeah. So this is, let's roll S3, the Ambien clip.
And it was that one debate that caused the full backslide.
Yeah, man. And I'll tell you what, I know exactly what happened in that debate. He flew around the world, basically, and the mileage that he could have flown around the world 3 times.
Yeah.
He's 81 years old. He's tired as shit. They give him Ambien to be able to sleep. He gets up on the stage, and he looks like he's a deer in the headlights. And it feeds into every fucking story that anybody wants to tell. And Jake Tapper, with literally how many anonymous sources. If this was a conspiracy, Andrew, you know this, somehow the entirety of a White House in which you literally living on top of each other has kept their mouth shut about, like what? And what's conspiracy?
Yeah.
That Joe Biden got old? Yeah, he got old. He got old before our eyes.
And that's to me where he's like, he got old before our eyes. It's like, okay, but what does that mean? Like,
right, exactly.
Yes.
I
mean, not to be to be ageist, because this happens at different ages and different rates of speed for different people. But yeah, it was a very noticeable decline. So what specifically did you experience there that leads you to say that? So yeah, he tries to position it as almost like, as deeply unfair. The other part, of course, is the fact that Joe Biden was the reason Nancy Pelosi and the others pushed him out, because he was getting destroyed in the polls.
Yeah.
He was set to, obviously Kamala lost too, but he was set to lose like New Jersey, Virginia, Colorado, New Mexico. I mean, it was set to be an absolute and complete Democratic bloodbath, which is why they moved on him. And that part of the story also was completely left out, because he wants to frame it as, and listen, this is a son, it's his dad. I kind of get it in a sense, but he wants to frame it as this sort of like elite chess move against Biden. And on one level it was, but the reason the chess move was made is because the American people had rendered their verdict. This man cannot be president again. He is too old. He is not up to the job today, let alone 4 years from now. And that part of the story, that there was an overwhelming consensus among the American people, including among the Democratic Party electorate, that this was not the direction to go in, that's completely left out of the Hunter Biden narrative here.
Yeah, actually, Alex Thompson on this show like a month ago said one of the things he was reporting out after Zohran Mamdani won in New York was that there's something in voters' minds that weighs on them about the Biden cover-up that makes a Cuomo figure like seem especially detestable. And Saagar, I want to get your response to this post from Sam Stein. This is F1. This is like amazing revisionist history from Hunter, like next level, almost like award-worthy. He notes that Biden returned from his trip to Europe on the 14th of June, then went to Camp David. We remember this, right? He was at Camp David for a week. He got there on the 20th. The debate was on the 27th. And Sam says, how much Ambien did they give him?
Yeah.
I'd love to know the answer.
That's such a great point. And, look, I'm a world traveler myself. I sympathize around jet lag.
Look, I'm a world traveler. It's a true
like,
story. I did once run into Saagar on a flight from London to DC.
London. That's right.
And I walked past him. He has he has his champagne out. Of course, he wasn't drinking it, but he has his little champagne and he has his little pod and he's ready to go to bed.
I got upgraded on that flight, just so everybody knows. Shout out to the American Airlines credit card.
All right, globalists, look at you guys.
But my point is that anyone can sympathize with jet lag, all right? But let's do the math. You went to Europe. Okay, so that's a 7-hour time difference. You had multiple days to recover from your horrible 7-hour time. Also, by the way, he's flying on a plane with a fucking bed in it, last time I checked, on Air Force One. So it's not exactly difficult flying conditions. Came back to Camp David and spent multiple days there. And then, to your point, how much Ambien did he need to recover from a 7-hour jaunt, across the Atlantic? That's ridiculous. So the entire thing falls apart on its face. They continue to try and paint him as this strong guy who just had a bad night, when he literally melted in front of our eyes for years up until that point. And it just so happened to confirm what basically either was a quote conspiracy, or actually it's not even fair to say it was conspiracy, because the vast majority of the American people, including Democrats, always said that he was way too old, they shouldn't run. It was really only the media and high level Democratic elites who were like, no, he's sharp as a tack in a lot of these meetings. And so, to that point around Cuomo and everything, I have been wondering this, for the future of the Democratic primary. I do think it's going to be really important for voters to establish their trust, for politicians to be able to establish their trust with voters. Just be like, look, I'm going to tell you the truth. And that needs to be a vibe that comes from an outsider. So that's one thing where if you don't like Pete Buttigieg or somebody like that, anybody who was in the Biden cabinet should, in my opinion, be asked on the Democratic stage in the very first primary debate and be like, why didn't you say anything? Or, were you ever uncomfortable with this at the point? What was your assessment of the president's aid? It's going to put them in a very, very tricky position. And you really have to be somebody who was very courageous in retrospect. Was it Julian Castro or his brother? I forget. I think it was Julian on the stage who called out Biden's age, and he was vilified for it at the time. No, that was heroic, actually. Like, you're actually trying to tell the truth. And I'm hoping that this time around that gets, appreciated by the voters after having gone through this experience.